Why do people procrastinate? We know exactly what would yield the greatest impact and meaning in our lives, yet we stall and put them off to another time. One of the greatest reasons behind procrastination that people don't seem to talk about is perfectionism. Every perfectionist's worst nightmare is the fear of failure, the fear of disapproval, or simply put, the fear of making mistakes. We often avoid taking action because we think, oh, I need to learn more. The result? Information overload. You don't wish to proceed with the task at hand because you fear that the reality will never be as perfect as the idea in your head. So you binge watch other people doing the thing, people who have put in decades of work perfecting their craft, and this makes you belittle your experience. I am not ready yet and I need to learn more are the most widely used cliches of every procrastinator. And when you mix fear with perfectionism, the result is chronic procrastination. Here is the other problem: lack of motivation. As a student at uni, I would wait until very close to my exam date or my essay submission deadline before I got serious with study. Very often it was due to a lack of motivation. I would promise myself, don't worry, next week I will study for 6 hours stretch.
You're lying to yourself, Brian.
But inevitably, I would just end up procrastinating, leaving myself with a mountain of pages to study and very little time. This only made me feel more overwhelmed. In contrast, this was not the same scenario when I was much younger in primary school. And the reason was simple. There were incentives every year for coming top in my class, both at home from my parents and at school. These incentives were such a huge motivator. It kind of forced my brain to stay focused and study. Now that we know some of the major reasons why people procrastinate, how can we beat procrastination forever? Point number 1 is define your why. The cure to your lack of motivation is a strong why. Having a strong why will help you to say no to failure and to find ways to keep going even when things aren't straightforward. When people tell me that they lack the motivation to do something, I always question their why. Think about this for a moment. If you are truly obsessed as a student about graduating with a first-class degree, obviously you won't need any external push from anybody to keep you going, to keep you burning the candle to study. So the next time you find yourself postponing something important, take a minute and think about your why. A strong why is that thing that gives you clear purpose, making it easier to focus and take action. Your motivation will always be as strong as your why. The more you want it, the better. Point number 2, imagine your dying moment is near, because it probably is. This perspective has forced me many times out of my comfort zone. As Seneca once said, we are always complaining that our days are few and acting as though there would be no end of them. You get to bed each night assuming you will wake up the next day because that's what has always happened. While you might understand the concept of not waking up, it's hard to truly believe it because your brain is conditioned by years of waking up every morning. Most of us rarely, if ever, question this certainty. I think that the blind confidence, if I would call it that, but the blind confidence of waking up every day makes us to overlook our own mortality. What is the average life expectancy now? 70, 80, 90? Whatever that number is realistically, and I mean in some countries it's even much less. Now think about how many years you've lived already. I hope this perspective helps you to see it more clearly and perhaps inspires you to procrastinate less. Putting things off is the biggest waste of life. It snatches away each day as it comes and denies us the present by promising the future. The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately. Point number 3, reduce your task to its smallest form. Sometimes the sheer volume or complexity of tasks can be so daunting that it triggers avoidance behavior. If you had only 1 hour to commit to a particular big project, but you know there is absolutely no way you could complete that project in 1 hour, think of how you can break that project down to its simplest form such that you can take on just one aspect of that project for a given hour. The idea is to trick your brain into accepting that it would only actively work for 1 hour. Our brains are constantly looking for shortcuts, seeking for the simplest possible way of doing things. So trick it. So for me, instead of saying I will complete my assignment next month, I will rather say, now that I have 1 hour, I will commit that 1 hour to just writing the first 150 words of my essay's introduction. This way, all my focus is only on putting together 150 words. Create a detailed plan, outline what needs to be done and in what order, making the task more approachable. If you enjoyed this video, you might also like this other video here. I hope this video has inspired you in some way to make adjustments.